Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. A question I get asked a lot is how do I decide which dolls to sell when the time comes to sell? And now I'm constantly buying dolls, so that means I'm also constantly selling dolls, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but the main one being finite space. So I decided to make a video for you guys to kind of show you my doll room and show you the 10 things that I really consider in my mind when I'm deciding which dolls to sell. Now, that being said, I'm going to give you a little bit of a warning here. I'm taking you into my doll room today, and the lighting is not great in there, so the quality of the video is not going to be perfect. And the other thing is, please let it be a no judgment zone because things aren't in perfect order right now. I haven't organized and rearranged things in a while, so it is a bit messy in there, but that's part of the process of, deciding on which dolls to sell and move around. It's just trying to figure out, how is the organization going to be best. So let's jump right into it with number 10. Number 10 on my list is how much physical space does the doll occupy? So you guys can see my room is absolutely completely full, and one of the things about doll collecting is there is a limited amount of space. Now, I know that I have more space than most collectors have, but you can see that my space is, pretty full already. And so, because it's so full, if I want to continue to bring new dolls into my house, I have to let some dolls go. And that's just the way that it goes. So sometimes I'll look at dolls that take up a lot of space. So for example, I have quite a few Nancy Famosa dolls, and they take up a good amount of space in my room. And so at one time I started thinning those out so that they would fit better in the shelf and I would have more space for them. So that is one consideration I do look at, is how much physical space does the doll take up, and if I sell that doll, is it going to clear out more space for me to collect other things. Number 9 on my list is how many dolls from that particular company or artist do I have, because sometimes what I'll do is I want to at least keep one doll from an artist, and so I don't want to sell them all if I only have one doll from that particular artist. For example, my Melba is the only doll I have from that artist, so I definitely don't want to sell her because I always want to have one of her dolls in my collection. But on the other hand, maybe I just want to divest of all of a certain type of doll and get rid of them, and I decided lately, actually this week, that I'm going to do that with Zwergnazi. So I sold one of my Zwergnazi dolls already. I put the other one up for sale in the Zwergnazi sales group. She hasn't sold yet, but I'm hoping that she'll sell just because she's a very big doll. So going along with the space, she's about 20 inches tall, and I just don't have I just don't have a real connection to her. She's a cool doll and they're really beautiful, but I decided that I'm just going to cut Zwergnazi off, and Zwergnazi is not going to be one of the dolls that I collect, because sometimes it's easier to just say, I love this doll and I want to look at photographs of this doll and they're very beautiful, but I'm not going to collect them because I don't have the space to do so. Number 8 on my list is, does this doll make a good doll for my quote-unquote doll library? So an example of that is my Meadow Kira. She is a My Meadow dumpling doll, and the dumplings are extremely popular. They are not my favorite doll on earth. I love My Meadow as an artist, but I much prefer her tween size dolls. The dumplings are just in an age group that I don't particularly love. However, people very frequently have questions about dumplings. They're a very popular doll that a lot of people have, and so I hang on to her because if I ever want to do a comparison with her, or if I want to show people anything about her, she's good to have on hand for that sort of thing. So that is why I have not sold her yet, although I've had a lot of people actually reach out to me to tell me, hey Allison, if you ever sell your Kira, please let me know because I'm definitely interested. So I have thought about her a lot. She's kind of gone back and forth on her, but she's such a popular doll, and I feel like she makes a good reference, for lack of a better word, for my doll library. So I've had a hard time, deciding whether to let her go or not. Number 9 on the list is, can the doll share clothing with others? Because oftentimes if you've got a doll that just really cannot share clothing with anybody else and she requires her own special wardrobe, that may be a good indication that it's time to sell that doll, move her along to somebody else that's going to enjoy her more. An example of this one for me, and this is a doll I had put up for sale, but I'm actually really glad she didn't sell because it probably would have been one of my regrets, is my Chibi Pigeon. And I put her up for sale because she's such a unique size that I didn't have any clothing to go with her, and I just, you know, I was thinking, you know, I can't really play with her, I don't have a wardrobe. Well, things have changed, and I have gotten very much into Blythe, and she wears Blythe clothing, and so now, you know, I'm really glad, number one, that I didn't sell her, and number two, now I'm kind of having more fun with her. I've got more things to change her into. I'm glad I hung on to her because she is that, you know, special big-headed doll that kind of goes with that whole aesthetic, and I really am appreciative of her a lot more now that I have more wardrobe for her and that I have more things that I can change her into. But that could be one thing that you consider when you're looking at dolls is, you know, can they share with somebody, or does this doll have to have their own dedicated wardrobe? And maybe that'll help you make the choice of whether to keep that doll or adopt it out. Number 6 on my list is there a special story behind the doll? For example, did I get the doll at a show? Did I go to a particular amount of trouble to obtain the doll? Was the doll a gift? Those sorts of things I consider before I decide to sell a doll. An example of this doll that I'm going to show you guys is my tan Lola from Birdie & Creedy. Now, Lola is the first BJD that I ever had, although it's not this one, but it is this one. We're going to talk about duplicates a little bit in a minute, but I went to a lot of trouble to get this doll because what happened is I really wanted a tan Lola, and the artist Birdie & Creedy told me if I could get at least 6 people to order the doll that she would place an order from the factory. And so I went on a mad campaign, like, to have people order this doll, and I was recruiting people like, come on, this is going to be a really special doll and a really special resin tone. And so I really like did a lot of hard work to try to get people to purchase this doll, and we got the amount that we needed. We got the 6 people, and so we were able to order the doll. So even though she's a duplicate, because I went to so much trouble to get her ordered and to have her in my collection, she's not one that I would really consider selling because she is special to me for that reason. Now, number 5 on my list is, do I have duplicates? So we just were talking about the Birdie & Creedy dolls, and it's a lot easier for me to let a doll go if I have duplicates of the same doll in the same resin or in a different resin tone, or maybe it's like with the Nancy dolls. You know, I have a lot of Nancy dolls. There are duplicates. I mean, that's the same face over and over. But one thing I like to consider is, you know, do they have the same hair and eye color? Do they have the same outfit? You know, what makes one unique over the other? So, you know, at one time I had 2 Atelier Mimoni Kitty M's. One was in toffee, the other's in steel gray. The steel one is very special to me, so I kept her, and I wound up selling the toffee Kitty M just because she was a duplicate. I needed to move somebody along, and that's how I made that decision. So one thing you can really look at is, do I have duplicates of the doll? And, you know, with those duplicates, you know, how different are they? Are they the same, like really the same, or are they only slightly different? And to me, it's a lot easier to kind of move those along if they are duplicates. Like I said, I promised myself at one point that I would not do any more duplicate sculpts, but I break that rule all the time. But I really do try to consider when I'm buying a doll, is this something that I already have? Am I duplicating something? But, you know, that's one good rule of thumb to think about when you're looking at selling a doll. And so I had considered, like we just talked about, number 6, the Lola doll before the tan Lola, because she is a duplicate. I would never sell this Lola because she's my very first ever. But I did consider selling this one, but you know, I went to all that trouble to get her, so she doesn't fall, I mean, she falls into the, yes, she's a duplicate, but she's kind of special to me because I did get to go to so much trouble to get her, so she's not really one that I would want to sell. Number 4 on the list is, who do I have complete pieces for? Like, whose full set can I locate? What do I have their box? Do I have their COA? Do I have their original wig and eyes and outfit and things like that? So that's something that I always consider before I sell. And so, you know, if you have a doll that's got damages or that's missing pieces, you may not be able to get the money back that you spent on the doll, which you may not be able to get back anyway. You know, doll collecting is not a smart investment strategy if you're investing to retain value. But, you know, when you're looking at a doll, you know, are there damages to the doll or something messed up? So, for example, you may have seen in my confessions video for my Pongratz doll that my cat chewed up the end of the Pongratz stand. And so that's one that, you know, if I sell it, that's something I have to disclose, and that may affect the cost of the doll or the price of the doll I'm able to get. Another one I've been looking at lately is my doll in mine, Lorena, with the doll leaves body. And so I don't know where the doll leaves box is. As a matter of fact, I think I threw it out. I don't do much with her. And also my cat chewed up her foot, which you probably also saw in my confessions video. So I've been thinking about selling her because she's taken up space that another MSD doll could be in my shelf back here. And you can see, honestly guys, I know that this is a little bit of a disgrace how I have them all piled in here. And that's something that I'm trying to work on. And that's why honestly I do need to sell, because I see so many dolls that I love and I have so many, and this is kind of how I display them. And while, you know, this is really almost a storage solution, I mean, they're on display so I can see them. When I take them out to play with them, obviously, you know, that's where the real satisfaction is. But, you know, like I said, this is kind of disgraceful the way they're sort of piled all in here. So I'm letting you guys into a little bit of my my mess here, for lack of a better word. But yeah, she's one that I've really been considering selling, but I don't have a COA for her head. I bought her head from a trusted collector that I know doesn't support counterfeit, but you know, she has a Helianthus face up, if that's the way you say her name, the doll leaves body, but I don't know where any of the paperwork is, and she also has a chewed up foot. So I honestly don't know how much I'd be able to get for her. But she's one that I'm considering. But that's one of the things you want to think about when you're going to sell a doll is it worth it to you to sell the doll for possibly a lower price? Like if I had to sell her, let's say for, you know, $200, you know, if I saw one for sale for $200, would I try to snap it up with those damages? So that's another thing that I think to myself, like, am I, you know, is it worth it to me to sell her for that, or is that a price I would actually pay for that doll? So that's just one thing to consider when you're looking at, you know, trying to decide who's going to be voted off the island, so to speak. Number 3 on the list is, who would be easiest to buy back if I have regrets? So let's say I really regret selling a doll, which has happened to me several times over the years. There's actually 3 I'm going to show you guys here. And if I regret having sold that doll, am I going to be able to find it easily again, or am I going to have issues trying to get the doll again? So let's talk about 3 dolls that I have sold and regretted. One was my Emily by Ana Salvador. I regretted selling her. I had to sell one in a pinch, and my husband bought me another one for Christmas one year. Another doll that I sold and regretted was my Connie Low Ruth, the modern doll version, and I sold her and regretted selling her and was able to get her back in a trade. So I had a really nice trade partner and I ended up getting her back. And the last one is my Rose BB Flockling Peregrine. I sold him, really regretted it. I've ordered 2 more, a Peregrine and a Peony, from her last pre-order. I think they'll be here maybe like at the beginning of the summer, so I was able to get those back. But if I had another doll that I wanted to sell, let's say if I was trying to sell my Poupées doll, you know, those are harder to get. They take a much longer time. Talking about hard to get, Tender Creation. Tender Creation, she opened a pre-order today and it was closed in, I think it was 5 minutes. It sold out so fast. So I wouldn't sell them because, you know, those dolls are going to be really difficult for me to try to get back. Even though they're not closed editions and they're still available, they're more difficult to get a hold of. Nikki Britt's 18-inch dolls are extremely difficult to get a hold of, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in a minute, but these dolls are insanely hard to find, and they're very expensive when you do find them, so they're ones that you really have to think long and hard about selling before you decide to do so. But that's just a big point of advice for me is it going to be hard to get that doll back if you change your mind and you have regrets about selling the doll? Because, you know, I've sold a lot of dolls that I don't regret, but the nice thing is that, you know, some of the ones that I have sold, if I decide later that I regret it, most of them are going to be fairly easy for me to get back. Number 2 on my list is who haven't I changed clothes and photographed lately? So the way that I play, quote unquote, with my dolls is that I change their clothes and I take photographs of them. So I go through my room and I look at what dolls have I not changed or not taken photographs of lately. And then I kind of run them through all the other filters I talked about. So this Witchtail girl, she's one I've never changed her clothes. I've only photographed her like the few times when I first got her. So I'm seriously considering letting her go. She's also a little more mass produced, so she would be easier to replace. Now, Zia's one I hardly ever change or photograph, but because she falls into so many other categories, she'd be difficult for me to get back if I wanted to, you know, if I had regrets. She's special to me because I physically got her at L-Doll. So she falls into a lot of other categories, which is why I would not be considering selling her. But the doll in mine, Lorena, you know, she might be a little easier to get back, and I haven't changed her very much lately. I haven't photographed her lately. So that's another reason, you know, someone would become a contender for being sold. So, you know, if you're not changing your doll, if you're not doing things with them, if you're not photographing them, if you're not enjoying them, is your doll really living their best life with you? Or maybe should you consider moving the doll onto a new home so that somebody else can enjoy that doll? So that's one thing that I really like to consider. Another example of that for me are my little darlings. I have so many little darlings, and I rarely ever get them out and change. I mean, just look at this. This is another disgraceful shelf, okay? Because I just have the little darlings crammed in there, and I have duplicates. They fall into a lot of categories. So I have duplicate molds of them. I have 2 number 4s. I have 3 number 1s. I have 1 number 2 and 2 number 3s. But the thing with them is that they fall into the hard to get category. So if I sell them, they're going to be very difficult to get back because a lot of these artists don't, you know, they have very long wait lists, and they're just difficult to get because they're, you know, they've got such a long wait list. But I have really seriously considered letting go of some of my duplicates. So I've considered letting go of my number 1 by Jerry, my number 3 by Pat, and possibly, oh, my number 4s are hard because they're both so beautiful. One is by Helen and one is by Nellie. I would probably definitely keep both of those, but you know, it's just really tough. Like, look at it. I'm not doing these dolls any justice by having them crammed in here. I rarely change them. I don't photograph them, and I almost feel like if I sold a few of them and there were less in here and they looked more pleasing to the eye, I would be more attracted to them when I came in here and, you know, wanted to change clothes and take photographs of a doll. So that's something that, you know, I also consider when selling. Selling is very hard, so don't get me wrong. Like, it's very difficult to decide what doll to sell, because when I bring a doll in, I bring it in because I do love it, and there is a reason that I wanted it in the first place. But, you know, just look at that. I mean, it looks horrible. I need to do something about it. I probably need to let 1 or 2 of them go, and that's just the way it goes. So that's something that I really think about, you know, when I'm going to sell a doll, is have I really played with the doll lately? You know, is there somebody else out there that would really enjoy this doll a whole lot more than I would, and maybe it's something they've been looking for and I could help one of their dreams come true. Number 1 on my list, and this is honestly probably the most important thing I consider, is which of my dolls is actually going to sell. Nothing frustrates me more than putting a doll up for sale and then it just sits up there for sale and it never moves. So if the doll has a very healthy secondary market, that will automatically make it a stronger consideration for me when it's time to sell. Now, why do I think of it this way? Well, oftentimes what I do is I motivate myself to downsize. I motivate myself to sell by replacement. So I'm downsizing because I'll sell, you know, 2 or 3 dolls and I'll replace them with one other doll. And so, you know, I've kind of been obsessed with Blythe lately. I really want to get a Tina custom and they're like $2,700. Oh my goodness. And they sell so fast, but in order for me to even buy one of those, like I would have to be ready with the money, which I'm not right now. So I would have to sell several dolls. So that's one thing I think about, like, well, if I sold like 4 dolls, you know, and I just have the money sitting there, I can be ready. I'm downsizing because I'm trading 4 dolls for 1, so that's helping with the space situation, and it motivates me to actually sell. But I have to choose a doll in order to like reinvest that money in another doll. The dolls actually have to sell. So I'm going to give you an example of that. I used to have 6 of the Nikki Britt Big Kids, and I sold 3 of them, and I chose those 3 to sell because I went through the whole list kind of that I just did with you guys. I hadn't changed their clothes in a while. I didn't have a special story behind them. Like these 3 I got directly from Nikki. All 3 came directly from her, from either shows or I had special ordered. The other 3 I got secondhand. The other 3 are her more common dolls, so even though they're still very hard to find, the Wendy Weird, Phoebe Phantom, and Pepper Annie in the 18-inch size, they are more common out of her 18-inch dolls, so it wouldn't be completely unheard of for me to find a new one. They also sold very fast. I put them up for sale. Within 30 minutes, they were sold. I was able to get back the money that I had in them, so I was able to get all my money back. And I took those 3 dolls, which took up, you know, a big space like this, and I traded them in for my Pasha Pasha Loki. So that was how I was able to convince myself to sell those 3, because they're really popular dolls and people still, they came out around 2014, 2015, and people still really want them, but she doesn't make them anymore. You can't get them, and so people are always wanting them. So I decided, you know, I'm going to sell these 3 because I don't have, you know, I'm not playing with them, I'm not using them. They'll be easier to get back if I totally regret my decision, and in the meantime I can trade them in for a Pasha Pasha full set. So that's exactly what I did. So that is one way that I kind of look at selling or downsizing, because for me it's mostly about downsizing. Like, I mean, I've showed you this room. It's pretty bad. By some standard it's bad. Some people tell me, you know, your room is really organized. I look at it and, you know, I love all the dolls in here, and it's like I said, it's almost more of a storage thing for me. Like, I can see most of them, but you know, some of the ones in the back I can't see as well, and so if I want to play with them I need to pull the whole front row out and then get to the back row. But at least they're here and I know they're safe and they're in a good storage environment or display environment, whatever. But you know, that's a big part of it. As a matter of fact, just as a brief mini doll room tour, these are the IKEA Need Bees, which they sadly discontinued, very sadly. I love these. They're CD shelves. In the US, they discontinued them. I understand in some countries they still have them. But I was planning to get more of these because they're not very deep. You can kind of slide them in, you know, to a place, and it's, you know, really nice, and you can put cute things in them, and I just really like them for doll display. But the problem is they don't have them anymore, and so I'm probably going to replace both of these with another Billy, which like a half-size Billy, but my IKEA's been out of those lately. So it's a constant struggle for me trying to figure out, you know, where am I going to put this stuff? I've got all these dolls coming in, and so sometimes it's as simple as, you know, I'm going to pick out 3 or 4 dolls today to sell because I've got 3 or 4 dolls coming in. And you know, not only that, but then I'll turn around and take that money from the 3 or 4 dolls and I'll spend it on just 1 doll, or maybe I'll buy clothing. I bought some expensive Blythe clothing in the past month, LOL. So, you know, it's just, selling is tough because like I said, everything that I bring in here, I really do love. Like I I'm not, you know, I really love all the dolls. And see, here's the other thing, like all these dolls here, they're either yard sale dolls or they're dolls from my childhood, and I love that. Like, I love those dolls just as much as I love my expensive dolls. And so that's one thing about doll collecting for me, is that you can be a collector no matter what kind of doll you collect or what your budget is. But, you know, I don't want to get rid of those either. Like, so I have to be very conscientious about the dolls that I bring in, and I have to be very conscientious about the dolls that I let go. Some additional tips that I have for selling. First of all, don't look them in the eyes once you decide to sell. So, you know, once you've made that decision, you don't want to do anything that's going to make you fall back in love with that doll. And, you know, if you're like me and you kind of assign a personality to your doll, it's almost like you don't want to let the doll know that you're, you know, rehoming it. For me, people ask all the time, where do you sell your dolls? I prefer to sell on the Facebook groups that are specific to that particular doll or artist. So, for example, the Zwergnazi doll that I told you guys that I put up for sale, that's listed on the Zwergnazi sales group. When I sell, if I were to sell the doll in mine, Lorena, I would probably put her up on my personal Facebook first, and also there's a Facebook page called BJD Addicts Sales and Commissions. And, you know, every artist just about has their own Facebook group, or there's a Facebook fan group, so I'll typically go to those. I also sell on Instagram with varying levels of success, so often I'll put the things up on Facebook first and then Instagram second. If it doesn't sell immediately on Facebook, sometimes I list them at the same time. It just all depends. It's just, you know, it's however I guess I feel at the time. eBay is generally a last option for me. If a doll is not selling through either of those methods, I will list on eBay. I'm very careful about that, and if I list on eBay, I always list for, you know, higher than I list on Facebook or on Instagram, because eBay's fees are so high. But also, I'm very careful about who I sell dolls to. I don't want my dolls to get into the hand of a counterfeiter. So those are just some tips that I have for selling. Alright guys, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helps you when you come to that decision matrix about which doll you need to sell. You know, these are just the things that I go through in my mind when I'm looking at selling a doll, or when I know, you know, I need to sell a couple of dolls this month. I'm kind of in that position now, so I thought it would be a good time to make this video, because I am going to be selling a few of the dolls that we talked about in the video. But anyway, hopefully it does help you and gives you a better understanding of how I make those decisions. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.